Welcome to this podcast episode brought to you by AGS Agriculture Global Solutions, your partner for better oil palm farming. Today, we are exploring how planting a specific cover crop on your sloped land can act like a sponge for rainwater, stopping soil erosion and boosting your palm yields. Register now on cropdrive.ai. Use the tool completely free of charge, no hidden fees, no conditions. CropDrive helps you improve your oil palm growing skills. Subscribe to our channel so you do not miss key oil palm best practice episodes. So to kick off today's deep dive, we really need to talk about the physical reality of farming on sloped land.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you are managing a hillside plantation, you probably know that sinking feeling when a massive tropical downpour hits. You look down at the water rushing past your boots, and, well, it's a dark, muddy brown.
Right, and that color isn't just mud, is it?
No, not at all. That is literally the hundreds of dollars of fertilizer you just meticulously applied last week. And it's the irreplaceable topsoil that your palms desperately need. It's just physically washing away, vanishing right down the slope.
It's just an incredibly painful scenario for a farmer to watch. Because, when you're farming on what the industry calls marginal lands, specifically those steep slopes, you want your land to drink in every single drop of that rain.
Exactly. But instead, the ground ends up acting like a tilted sheet of glass,
Oh.
The moisture and all those nutrients just slide right off.
Leaving your palm trees just standing there, completely thirsty and underfed, right after a rainstorm.
Yeah,
It makes hitting those high-yield targets feel almost impossible.
it really does. And the natural reaction for most of us is to just blame the slope itself. Like, gravity is pulling the water down, so it feels inevitable. But the steepness is really only half the issue here.
Okay, so what's the other half?
Well, the real hidden culprit is the vulnerability of bare, exposed earth. Like, if we look at the actual physics of a heavy raindrop falling from the sky, it gathers a lot of speed as it falls.
Right, it's really coming down hard.
Yeah, and by the time it hits that bare dirt on your hillside, it carries a surprising amount of kinetic energy. It doesn't just make the ground wet, it actually acts like a microscopic hammer, violently striking the surface.
A hammer? Wait, so it's inflicting actual physical damage to the dirt?
Exactly. It's literally shattering the little clumps of soil into fine dust the second it impacts.
Oh, wow. So it breaks the structure apart.
Right. And once those soil clumps shatter, the water immediately turns that dust into a very fine, soupy mud. And this mud just flows into all the tiny microscopic gaps and air pockets in the ground.
Yeah, I'm guessing that creates a problem.
A huge problem. It completely seals those gaps shut. Within minutes of a heavy rain starting, the surface forms this hard, impenetrable crust. The water simply cannot sink into the earth anymore.
Ah, so then gravity just takes over.
Exactly. The water rushes downhill, carving out destructive channels and taking your topsoil with it.
I always picture soil health coming down to something I call the kitchen sponge effect. Like, if you take a hard, dry, baked kitchen sponge that's been sitting out in the hot sun all day and you pour a glass of water on it, the water just splashes right off the sides.
Yeah, that is a perfect analogy. It makes a mess everywhere except inside the sponge.
Right. But if you have a soft, damp sponge that is full of open, unblocked holes, it just drinks the water right up. In farming, what we really want is to build up the porosity of the soil, right?
Porosity is central to everything we are discussing today. Healthy soil desperately needs those empty spaces.
Because that's where the water hides.
Yes, and more importantly, it's where the roots of your oil palm can easily travel to absorb that stored water and those trapped nutrients. Without porosity, your trees are essentially starving while standing in the middle of an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Man, that's a tough visual. And that crusting caused by the raindrop hammers that just violently destroys the surface porosity.
Exactly. So if the bare, exposed dirt is the root of the problem, well, covering it seems like the obvious biological solution.
Right, which brings us to the actual science. We have this fantastic 2018 study out of Jambi, Indonesia, for our deep dive today. And they didn't just test whether covering the soil helps in general.
No, they got very specific. They pitted different living cover crops against each other to find out which one is the ultimate ally for an oil palm farmer working on a slope.
And the setup in Jambi was intentionally challenging, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The researchers used a 2-year-old oil palm plantation situated on a severe incline. We're talking over a 20% slope.
A 20% slope is severe. If you tried walking up that with a heavy load of fresh fruit bunches after a rainstorm, you'd be sliding backward half the time.
Yeah, it's exhausting terrain, but it perfectly represents the kind of tough marginal conditions that so many smallholders face every single day.
So what exactly did they do on this hill?
They divided the sloped land into different test plots. One area was left entirely to the natural, wild weeds, just to see what nature would do on its own.
Okay, kind of as a baseline.
Right. And the other areas were planted with specific cover crops, often called biomulch, to measure which plant actually improved the soil's ability to act like that soft sponge.
And they tested a few common contenders that, a lot of our listeners will probably recognize. They looked at Centrosema pubescens, which is that popular vine that handles shade under the palm canopy pretty well.
Yeah, that's a very common one.
And then there was Pueraria javanica, which is known as a really fast-growing creeper. And finally, a plant called Arachis pintoi. But looking at the raw data from this Jambi study, I have to push back on something here.
Okay, what's that?
Well, if our primary goal is to stop water runoff as fast as humanly possible, wouldn't a farmer just want the plant that grows the quickest and absorbs the most water?
You would think so, yes.
Because the data clearly shows that the vine, the Pueraria javanica, actually grew the fastest above ground, and the soil planted with it absorbed water at a rate of over 58 centimeters per hour. It won the raw absorption race.
It did win that specific metric, yes.
So why are we focusing so heavily on Arachis pintoi for our deep dive today if it didn't win the speed test?
Well, that is the danger of just looking at raw numbers without considering the real-world application. I mean, if a farmer only cared about stopping water in a controlled lab setting, Pueraria looks fantastic.
But a farm isn't a lab.
Exactly. Smallholders are managing a complex, living ecosystem, and a farmer's time is incredibly limited. The biological reality of Pueraria javanica is that it's a highly aggressive climbing vine.
Climbing, so it doesn't just stay flat on the ground.
No, it grows vigorously, and it will aggressively climb literally anything vertical it touches. And in a young 2-year-old plantation, what are the only vertical structures around?
Your vulnerable palm trees.
Yeah.
Wow, I see the trap now.
Yeah, you solve your water runoff problem, but you inadvertently create a massive, exhausting maintenance nightmare for yourself.
Because you'd have to be out there constantly just performing harsh manual labor, hacking the vines away from your palms.
Right, just to stop them from strangling the trunks or blocking the vital sunlight from the young fronds. That kind of constant intervention totally defeats the purpose of an efficient cover crop.
Yeah, a cover crop should do the work for you, not create endless new chores that eat into your time for harvesting,
Exactly, and this is exactly why the researchers highlighted Arachis pintoi as the true, practical champion for sloped land. It's a perennial legume, meaning it lives for years, and it uses a completely different growth strategy.
Okay, so how does its growth strategy differ from the climbing vines? Does it just stay flatter against the dirt?
Yes, and it grows incredibly slowly above ground. The Jambi study meticulously measured the tendrils of the Arachis pintoi, and they found it grew at an average of only 2.47 centimeters per week.
Wait, just under 2.5 centimeters a week? That is practically crawling.
It is barely moving. But while it crawls, it forms this dense, continuous green carpet that perfectly shields the soil from that raindrop hammer we talked about.
And I'm guessing it doesn't have that biological urge to climb your trees.
Exactly. You don't need to fight it back with a machete every weekend. But here's the fascinating part, that slow above-ground growth is actually an evolutionary trick.
A trick? What do you mean?
It is redirecting almost all of its cellular energy somewhere else entirely.
It's putting all its effort into growing underground.
Yes. Its root system is an absolute powerhouse. Instead of building leaves to climb higher and higher, it pushes these dense, highly fibrous roots deep down into the earth.
How deep are we talking?
The researchers found that by week 20 after planting, the roots of the Arachis pintoi had penetrated over 50 centimeters deep into that tough, sloped hillside.
0.5 meter of roots drilling down into a steep hill in just a few months. That's incredible. I mean, that completely changes the physical structure of the hillside.
It does. Going back to your sponge analogy, every single one of those roots is acting like a tiny drill bit pushing through the hard clay.
Making those empty spaces.
Right, and plants are constantly renewing their root systems. So as the older roots naturally die off and decompose, they leave behind these hollow, microscopic tubes in the soil.
Wow, so they're physically manufacturing permanent porosity. They're building an underground drainage network.
Exactly, and that perfectly explains the massive win highlighted in the data. The fields planted with Arachis pintoi saw their water infiltration rate jump to over 49 centimeters per hour.
Which is a 32.47% increase compared to just letting natural wild weeds grow on your hill.
Think about that. A nearly 33% improvement in how fast your soil captures rain that is transformative for a farm.
So when a severe storm hits that 20% slope, The dense leaves cushion the blow, preventing the crust, and then the roots just drain it all away.
Right, pulling the water safely below the surface instead of letting it sheet off the hill.
And since Arachis pintoi is a legume, there's another hidden biological benefit happening while all this water is draining, right?
Yes, as a legume, it has this remarkable ability to fix nitrogen. Through a symbiotic relationship with specific bacteria in its roots, it pulls nitrogen gas directly from the air.
And converts it into a form the soil in your palms can actually use. That is wild.
You're essentially getting a state-of-the-art water management system and a slow-release nitrogen fertilizer factory all in one single plant.
Which brings us to the dry season. Because, as oil palm farmers, we don't just face heavy rains. The harsh dry seasons can be just as damaging to the yield.
Oh, absolutely. Drought stress is a major yield killer.
So how does this underground sponge help when it hasn't rained in weeks?
Well, think of the sloped land as a giant battery. During the rainy season, the Arachis pintoi charges that battery by trapping enormous amounts of water 50 centimeters deep.
Okay, so the water is safely stored down there.
Right. And then the dense green carpet on the surface acts as a thick insulating blanket. It prevents the harsh sun from baking the bare soil and evaporating all that stored moisture.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So when the dry season hits, the surface of the hill might look a bit parched, but underneath it's still damp and cool.
Exactly. Your oil palms have very extensive root systems. During a severe drought, those palm roots easily tap into those deep reserves of water and trap nutrients that the cover crop secured months ago.
While neighboring farms with bare hillsides are just suffering.
Right, they face severe drought stress, drop fronds, and collapsing yields. But your plantation remains hydrated, healthy, and productive. You are effectively drought-proofing your land.
I love that. Drought-proofing a farm just by strategically changing the plants growing at the feet of the palms.
It's a game changer.
Okay, so let's make this highly practical. I want to shift away from the theory and step right into the shoes of a smallholder farmer.
Let's do it.
Let's create a scenario. I am standing on my steep 20% slope. I have my machete in my hand. I am looking at bare dirt and wild weeds. I want this Arachis pintoi system. What is my very first move?
Okay.
Because I assume I don't just go buy a bag of seeds and throw them everywhere on a random Tuesday.
No, relying on seeds would definitely be your first critical mistake. Interestingly, Arachis pintoi produces these bright, beautiful yellow flowers, but biologically it struggles immensely to produce viable seeds.
Wait, really? Why is that?
It just evolved differently. Only about 4 to 8% of the flowers ever actually develop into a seed. It evolved to spread vegetatively, not by dropping seeds all over the place.
Ah, so trying to farm it from seed would be highly inefficient and probably really expensive.
Extremely expensive and frustrating. So your first move is finding an existing patch of the plant and taking cuttings.
Okay, so I just snip off pieces of the creeping stem.
Yes, but the Jambi study used a very specific, effective method for this. You want to select a stem cutting that has at least one internode.
An internode. Remind me what that is.
It's simply the section of the stem between two leaf joints. You need that space, and you need a pair of mature, healthy leaves attached to it.
Why is that specific part so important?
Because the plant's biology is primed to push out those dense, fibrous roots directly from those nodes the moment they touch moist soil.
Okay, I have a bundle of these stem cuttings ready to go. I'm looking up at the sky. Does the timing of when I stick them in the ground really matter?
Timing is the difference between success and failure here. The researchers purposefully waited for the weather to turn. You want to plant the cuttings exactly one day after a good, solid rainstorm.
Exactly one day. I would guess that's because planting in bone-dry baked soil is just a death sentence for a fresh cutting, right?
Exactly. A fresh cutting has no root system to drink water yet. It is entirely vulnerable. If the soil is too dry, the cutting desiccates and dies within hours.
Why not plant during the actual downpour?
Because then you are working in a muddy, flooded swamp. And if it's flooded, the cutting can easily rot before it establishes itself.
So one day after a heavy rain provides the perfect biological balance.
Yes. The soil is soft, making it easy to work without heavy tools, and the ambient moisture gives the cutting the immediate life support it needs while it frantically tries to grow its first root.
Perfect. So I've waited for the rain. It's the next day. I am walking the hill. How deep am I putting these cuttings into the soil?
Keep your tools simple. You really only need a basic stick to poke a hole. You plant the cutting at a very shallow depth of just 5 centimeters.
Just 5 centimeters. What happens if I bury them like 15 centimeters deep just to make absolutely sure they really hold on to the slope and don't wash away?
Well, if you bury them too deep, that small pair of leaves on the cutting will not be able to reach the sunlight.
Oh, right. They need light.
Exactly. The plant will exhaust all its stored cellular energy trying to push a shoot to the surface, and it will likely just die underground.
That makes complete biological sense. You don't want to drown it in dirt.
Right. 5 centimeters is deep enough to safely secure the node in the moist earth, but shallow enough that the leaves can remain above ground and immediately start photosynthesizing.
Creating energy for those new roots. Okay, now what about the spacing? Because if I have a massive hillside, I might be tempted to just put one plant every couple of meters to save myself time.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Or, conversely, I might cram them all right next to each other to stop the erosion tomorrow. The researchers chose a very specific layout for a reason, didn't they?
They did. They planted the cuttings in a precise grid, spacing them exactly 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters apart. There is a delicate biological balancing act behind those numbers.
What happens if I go wider, like planting them 100 centimeters apart?
If you do that, you leave too much bare soil exposed for too long. The natural, aggressive weeds will quickly take over those bare patches before the Arachis pintoi has a chance to spread its green carpet. You basically lose the battle to the weeds.
Okay, so what if I plant them 10 centimeters apart to get that instant overnight cover?
Then you create immediate, intense competition between your own cuttings. They'll vigorously fight each other for the early moisture and nutrients in that top layer of soil.
Before their deep roots can even form.
Exactly. Many will stunt or die from the stress. So the 40 by 40 centimeter grid gives each cutting its own undisturbed zone to establish a root system, but they're close enough that within a few short months, their creeping tendrils will meet.
Overlap and permanently close the canopy over the soil.
Precise.
You know, it is brilliant when you piece this whole scenario together. There is absolutely no heavy machinery required here.
None at all.
No massive earth-moving tractors to build expensive terraces on a 20% slope. It's literally just you, a machete to make the cuttings, a stick to make a 5-centimeter hole, and the strategic patience to plant them 40 centimeters apart the day after a storm.
It really is a low-tech method, but it fundamentally and permanently upgrades the hydrological health of the farm. It's the ultimate definition of working with nature's mechanisms instead of fighting against them.
Yeah, you're consciously swapping out chaotic, competitive weeds for a designated, low-maintenance partner plant.
Right, a partner that actively supports the palm yield. It holds the slope, drills half a meter down, fixes atmospheric nitrogen, and boosts water absorption by nearly 33%.
All while moving slow enough above ground that you actually get your weekends back instead of endlessly slashing vines.
Exactly. Keeping that topsoil secured and locking that moisture away deep underground for the dry season is the literal foundation of a thriving smallholder business.
It ensures the fertilizer you buy actually feeds your trees. I mean, it's a massive return on a very small initial investment of labor.
Yeah.
You are turning the ground itself into living infrastructure for your farm.
You really are. And, as we wrap up this discussion, there is one final lingering thought I'd like you to consider the next time you walk your sloped lands.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we've talked extensively today about how these roots act as water tunnels and nutrient traps. But when you plant a cover crop like this, you are fundamentally altering the microscopic world beneath your boots.
The soil ecosystem.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if this one specific plant can physically change how a whole hillside manages water. What is it doing to the unseen ecosystem? How is it interacting with the beneficial fungi or the local insect populations in the soil?
That's a great point. Because for generations, farmers have been taught to view any low-growing plant as a weed that just must be eradicated.
But this science shows us that the very things we've been fighting against might actually be our greatest, most powerful allies, just waiting for us to understand how to use them.
That is incredibly profound. Remember to visit our AI farming assistant at cropdrive.ai to learn more on how to increase your oil palm yields and incomes. Thanks for listening.